YouTube, fashion label owner, voice actor.
Okay.
What else we got here? Like songwriter, podcaster. Do you know what a Renaissance man is?
A Renaissance man?
A Renaissance man.
Like a person from the Renaissance?
Well,
Like a man from the 1600s?
kind of inspired by the Renaissance, but
Okay.
it's like this kind of new term. I don't know if it's new or not, but it's a term that I've been using, for a little while now. But it's someone who pursues like many different interests,
Right.
and becomes, very good at a few.
Uh-huh.
But is someone that like always just kind of is constantly pushing themselves and exploring their world and like trying to make their world a better place and constantly working on themselves, right? I'm convinced that whenever I meet a Renaissance man, which I think you are,
Okay. Thank you.
it has to come from like something to do with your childhood, something to do with
Right.
your upbringing, your childhood age, your teenage years, whatever
Right.
that may be. What was the dinner table like growing up in your family?
The dinner table. My family was always one of those families where it was like, it was never a silent dinner. So obviously the entire family loves to chat, to each other, not like, talk about the day, just talk about random things we saw or whatever. And I feel it's one of those families where the conversation would continue even after the food was finished. Right. And I think my parents really valued that. Not only in the sense of like, the family talking to each other and, catching up with everyone and making sure communication is good, but also just in the way of like expressing new things.
Like sharing things?
Yeah, like sharing things. Like I was definitely one of those kids where like I wasn't really afraid to hide anything from my parents. Whether it was like past relationships or like, things I recently found that I like, or the things I've been, interested in, whether it be creative or not. Like I always like enjoyed sharing that with my parents because I think they gave me a space to really express that and be open about that and not be like, what's the word? Like, I guess not be ashamed of anything, right? So they always like were constantly pushing me kind of in a subtle way, not like a, did you discover something new today? If you didn't, then
tell me now.
Then no rice for you. Well, it's like,
Yeah.
but every time I did, say like, oh, I'm interested in doing this, or like, even if it was something really small, like, oh, I found this like new genre of music I really enjoy, and I want to like try and like write stuff for it, or I found this new anime that was pretty cool. Like my parents always like, they wouldn't like, suck me off over it. Like they wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like they wouldn't be like, wow, very good, But they were very, upfront with it, and always ensured me that it wasn't something to be necessarily ashamed of.
Yeah, I think like you really nailed the sentiment, like with a safe space kind of thing, because it's so hard to as you're growing up and discovering things, really feel a sense of pride when you venture out into something new. Especially with like Asian parents.
Yeah.
Your mom's obviously Japanese. I'm not too sure how hard of a upbringing you had in that respect, but for me, Asian parents are like, you gotta like play piano and like do really well at math and like be a lawyer and a doctor.
I was
and blah,
both
blah, blah.
those things growing up. So I played piano and I was good at maths, but. Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I think, but I think that's where like the fine balance was constructed in my family, where it was like my mom would definitely be one of those typical Asian parents where like, she, I played piano growing up and I was good at math growing up. But I think it wasn't so much like of the tiger mom, really pushing it down my throat. It was more so she just gave me the environment to like discover it myself.
Right.
So like, for example, like I started learning classical piano when I was about 5-6 years old, but that wasn't as a result of my mom going, you're going to learn piano now. It was more so my sister actually was the one who originally was like, I want to learn how to play piano. And so my parents bought an upright piano, like a really cheap upright piano. We had it in the house, and I would watch my sister trying to learn the piano. And she, I think, like, just didn't get it. It wasn't really for her. After about, I think, 6 months, she decided to quit. But during those 6 months, I would watch her play the piano. And then when she was done with it, I would jump on and play the exact same thing she just learned. So my parents were like, oh, do you enjoy playing the piano? And I was like, yeah, I think this is kind of dope. And it's like, do you want to learn? Because your sister's quitting. So
gotta teach someone.
Yeah, we got, we literally spent all this money to buy this piano. So someone has to make use of it. So I was like, yeah, sure. I really enjoyed it. And then I learned that for like 10, 11 years. I went to lessons for like 10, 11 years. But you know, that was the thing. It was like, that was never my parents forcing me into that. It was more so, again, like they created that space where they basically just waited for me to discover it myself. And there was a good chance that I never would have discovered it myself. You know, maybe I would watch my sister play the piano and then I'd be like, okay, that's cool. Anyway, and then just go and do something else, right? And that piano would have just been collecting dust for those 10 years. But because my parents never discouraged me from trying something, that's what led me to find a lot of interests that I still very much like hold on to today.
Yeah. What are some of those other interests?
You know, obviously, like just my love for music in general. Like, the music I grew up with. Obviously, I grew up with like all the stuff that you would have heard, you know, back in like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, that every other kid was listening to. But my dad is like a massive like music nerd. He was like a drummer for years. And he, you know, he'd be playing, you know, all the 70s and 60s bands that he grew up with throughout the house. And, you know, he just played that music because he just personally enjoyed it. But then I started to really enjoy it from a young age. And then my dad obviously got very excited over that, being like, oh, my fucking 2-year-old son is jamming out to fucking Rolling Stones.
Oh,
like,
that's so good.
That's sick as hell. So like, and then, you know, from then on, when I got a little bit older and I was like going out and on the internet and like finding new music and stuff like that, my dad would be like, hey, I know you like Led Zeppelin. Here are all these other bands that I grew up with that you might enjoy. If you like it, then cool. If you don't, that's cool too. So again, it kind of gave me the opportunity to actually like go down the rabbit hole and discover everything for myself. And because again, like we were that family that loved sharing stuff with one another. You know, my dad would recommend me music, but then I would recommend music to my dad. And I still do that to this day. Which is cool. It's a cool environment to have. You know?
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Seriously, being able to have a tight knit family like that is such a uncommon thing, actually. You know?
No, I'm very blessed to be in that position for sure.
Yeah. What did you study when you straight out of high school? Straight afterwards, you know, you're obviously developing your love for music and stuff like that during your teenage years.
So originally, I deviated twice. So originally, and I don't know why, but I wanted to study at uni quantum physics.
Okay. Just right up there.
Just right up there. Because like I always enjoyed, like I always excelled at physics in school because I always just found it fascinating. And especially things like astrophysics I really enjoyed because like I've just loved like space shit for as long as I've known. So I really like kind of, again, this was a result of me kind of falling into the rabbit hole of physics, you know, during high school where like I would have 3 a.m. sessions in my room where I'm just like reading through the quantum physics like Wikipedia page and I'm just like, this shit's nuts. Like, what is this? But it's so fascinating and I want to learn more about it. And I like seriously considered like studying that at uni. But then I kind of thought about it retrospectively and I'm like, I don't know if I can get a job.
There's the practical Asian side comes through.
Yeah. I'm like, realistically, passionately, this is cool to pursue, but realistically speaking, what could I do other than sit in a lab for the rest of my life, you know? So I scrapped that. And then after that, I thought maybe to do like audio engineering.
Ah.
Yeah, because again, like music, like physics, match made in heaven.
Ironically, me too. Like,
yeah, right?
Yeah, because I started with drums when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then I became, strangely, a DJ.
Yeah.
And then electronic music and audio engineering came from there as well.
Yeah, exactly. So like I thought like, okay, well, audio engineering is, you know, definitely more of a, I guess, an open job circle compared to like quantum physics. You know, I could do that kind of work, but at the same time, I didn't want to like pigeonhole myself just into audio stuff because I liked a lot of just like creating stuff that wasn't necessarily just audio. So my second deviation from that, and I ended up doing design computing, which is basically the fancy way of saying I did an arts like degree,
right?
But for designing things through a computer. So like
CAD.
Yeah, so like, you know, we did like 3D modeling and like obviously programming, UX design, UI design, audio engineering was part of that as well. And I learned video editing during my first semester of that. And that's what made me interested in making video. And that's when I started my YouTube channel.
What year was this?
This was 2013.
Wow.
So I've been doing it. Next week will be 11 years.
Damn.
Yeah.
You.
I'm what's apparently someone in the Anitube community said that I'm an OG now.
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, right. Aren't you?
No? I mean, I don't know. I don't feel that way because there were so many people who have been doing it longer than I have.
Right.
I've just lasted this long, I guess.
I mean, that deserves a label all on its own, right?
I guess, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it's like, is that just like a nice way of saying that like I'm old now? You know?
How old are you?
I'm 29.
Haven't crossed over just yet.
Yeah, well, a couple of months. I'll be there.
When did your love for anime really start?
Oh, ever since I was like a baby. So the first thing I watched was my grandma back in Japan would send me VHS tapes of like basically like the equivalent to Saturday morning cartoons, but of anime in Japan that like kids would, you know, grow up watching. So like the Doraemons, the Crayon Shin-chans, all that kind of stuff, the Sazae-sans. And so she would tape those to VHSs and then just send like a month's worth of like of these shows in like a giant box of VHSs and ship it all the way to Australia. And so I would just fucking rewatch the same like however many episodes of Doraemon and, you know, Ghibli films and all that kind of stuff until like the tape's worn out. And then from there, my mom, I think I was like 5 years old maybe. My mom got the second volume of Doraemon from somewhere, like the manga. I don't know why the second one, you know, because I would have liked to have started with the first one.
I mean,
but I didn't know any better. I was like 5 years old, right? But so, and then I started reading that, and I was already excited to like read it because I'd already watched Doraemon on TV and loved it. So I picked it up and started reading it, and I was like, oh wow, this is like just as good as the VHS stuff, but it's like it's making me use my brain a little bit more because I have to like read it. So yeah, so that's how I kind of like, you know, learned to like that. And then another big thing as well growing up for me was that in Sydney, the majority of my childhood friends were full Japanese or half Japanese kids, because in Sydney, the Japanese community is quite tight knit.
Right.
So once you kind of have your foot in the door of like one or both of your parents being Japanese in Sydney, you're bound to know pretty much every other at least half Japanese or like Japanese ethnicity kid in the Sydney area. And my mom like really like pulled through with that because she had like a mothers group where it was all the moms were Japanese and the dads were like Australian or like non-Japanese. And so she, I guess, didn't want me and my sister to like be alone or like potentially be, you know, ostracized because of our Japanese background, or I don't know what the exact, you know, motive for that was. But she introduced me and my sister at a very, very young age to these other Japanese kids. And then obviously when you're friends with a lot of Japanese kids in Sydney, you know, they're going to be talking about Japanese culture stuff. And a lot of that is going to be things like anime and games and manga. So growing up from there, I would, just to catch up to all of my Japanese friends, you know, I would also be catching up by reading a lot of manga, watching a lot of anime. And then, yeah, the passion just went from there.
Nice. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Did you, growing up in Sydney, because I mean, my experience is probably a little bit different to yours. You know, growing up in Sydney, my parents went the other way. They were like, oh, well, especially my mum. I think the general thinking was, I'm going to try and assimilate him into as many like Western things as possible.
Right.
And so I grew up like a fucking bogan, something like, you know, when you're talking about like being all like tight knit with your family and like growing up in a nice harmonious life.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was out like drinking, you know, Woodstocks in the park with my mates.
I mean, I was doing that too. You know, I didn't share everything with my parents. Yeah. I was doing a lot of bad things as well. But...
I mean to say I was a bloody like delinquent, you know, like really bad, hanging out with a whole bunch of Aussies and stuff like that. Yeah. Asians too, but you know, I definitely picked up the whole Aussie side of things.
I totally get that because like, you know, although I did have a lot of like childhood friends who were Japanese, you know, not every one of them were like innocent. You know, some of them were Daryl as fuck, man. Like some of them were bad. And like from like so my primary school, I originally went to this school called Sydney Japanese School in Terry Hills, which is like kind of a half Japanese school mixed with a Western school. So each year would have like 2 different classes where it was like the Japanese class that was filled with like legit just like straight up full Japanese kids, and the classroom looked and felt like a Japanese school. And then for the international kids, there was the international class, which was, you know, like any other school in Australia. But the difference is that the international classes would have Japanese lessons to learn Japanese, and the Japanese classes would have English classes, and it would be kind of this like melting pot of Japanese kids interacting with, you know, international kids. I went to that, you know, obviously being half, I think for my parents, it just made sense for me to go to that. But then I guess they didn't like how the school operated. So they got me out of that school in year 3. And so from year 4 onwards until basically uni, I went to just like a regular primary school and high school where I was pretty much the only Asian or even partially Asian kid in my year. And then I went to Camaret Saturday School, which is where I would learn all of my Japanese stuff. So it was kind of like, it was weird. It was like this almost split personality thing for me. Yeah. Where like on the weekdays, I would be like the Aussie kid hanging out with other Aussie kids. And then on the weekends, I'd be the Japanese kid hanging out with other Japanese friends. And so like from there, I started to develop like quite a bit of like an identity crisis.
I mean, very early to do so, but it's hard to navigate, right? As an Asian, I can definitely like,
because like I always thought to myself, like, do I have to be one or the other in order to like fully feel like I belong? You know, because obviously at my regular weekday schools, I would feel a little bit out of place, I guess, or like not fully assimilated into the Western side just because of my Japanese heritage, and vice versa with the Saturday school with my Australian heritage. So I remember in high school, like it was pretty bad. Like I legitimately didn't know who I was and whether to lean forward fully into one or the other. Luckily, I kind of figured it out as I went along, and I realized like, oh, I can be both if I want to.
Exactly.
You know? But yeah, it was bad at one point. It was a real fucking crisis.
Yeah, I could definitely imagine. I think I distinctly remember being something similar. You know, when my mum forced me to go to Chinese school on Saturdays and learn Chinese. Not that I remember any of it now anyway.
Yeah.
But, you know, same kind of deal. Feeling very segregated between the two worlds. My kind of resolution was to mix everything together.
Yeah.
So, you know, I grew up skateboarding. Like I loved skateboarding.
Yeah.
And I would have, you know, Western friends and Asian friends, and just randomly they all like skateboarding. So I was like, okay, let's all do it together and have this little cute friend group, and you know, mix everything up and get the true like Aussie experience kind of thing. Because I think that's what's special about Australia, right? Like it's such a melting pot of culture. It's such a multicultural country, much more so than what I hear other countries are.
No, definitely, yeah.
Definitely more accepting of like so many different cultures.
For sure. And I feel especially like when you're a kid as well, like other kids, you know, at the end of the day, like, did I get bullied for being Japanese partially? Yeah, a little bit during high school. But then after a while, you find out that, you know, those people were never going to be your friends anyway. And the friends that you do make along the way, they don't give a fuck what nationality you are. Like, if you're a cool dude, you're a cool dude. That, you know, end of story, right? So, no, definitely. I think in that sense, I was also very blessed that I grew up in Australia, because if I had tried to do the same thing in Japan, for instance, I don't think it would have gone as well. And I would have definitely leaned way more onto one side or the other in terms of like which side of my ethnicity to prioritize.
In today's world, especially with cameras on our phones that we carry around with us 24/7, everyone takes photos, but that doesn't mean that everyone is a photographer. There is a difference between taking quick snapshots of your lunch and intentionally using photographic techniques to craft an image that could be art. And if you are looking at picking up the art and the craft of photography in the pursuit of mastery as quickly as possible, then maybe you might find this interesting. So I've spent well over 10,000 hours in dozens and dozens of different countries all across the world, all in the pursuit of taking world-class images that stand the test of time. And as a Sony digital imaging ambassador, I've condensed down everything that I know, all of the techniques, all of the tips, all of the tricks, and structured them into 2 courses for beginner photographers that, as many of my students have said, have drastically accelerated their learning. And for many of them, just after a single month after doing my courses provides most of them with the confidence and the technical ability to use a camera, to also intentionally compose images and to start to create a visual aesthetic, and also, of course, creating a style when editing photos. So if that sounds interesting to you, then check out my 30-day photography fundamentals course and my Lightroom editing masterclass over at patkay.com/courses. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Now, back to the episode. For your creativity, do you think...
Or lack thereof?
I mean, well, you might say that, but, music, and when I started the pod saying you're a Renaissance man, immediately you went straight to like music, and I was like, this is it.
I like music, man.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah. Like it's a really cool thing, and I can see now why like you're so... Like you've always kind of been into so many different things. And, I mentioned this in previous podcasts as well for myself, but I'm very similar in that way. Like when I look back at like the arc of my life, like there's been so many like, sub stories, so many arcs, where I've just gone into certain things, tried to get really good at it, tried something else, tried to get really good at it, tried something else, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an important skill because you can, like as an adult, you just have all of these different experiences and all these different skills and all that kind of stuff. On that, people tend to pick up their first skills or their first real life skills in jobs. The first job when you're like 16 years old, 17 years old, and that kind of stuff. What kind of jobs did you work for before YouTube?
So I never had like a stable job. The only really like jobs, well, I tried to apply for McDonald's when I was 14. I got rejected.
Oh, damn.
So at that point, my dad was like, "Oh my God, my son's going to be unemployed for the rest of his life. If he can't even get a job at McDonald's where they're basically handing out jobs for free, my son is fucked." But when I was 16, my first actual job was when I was 16. My mom used to work for a ski resort company where basically the company was responsible for like being like a travel agency, taking Australians to ski resorts in Japan.
Sweet.
So obviously my mom had a lot of like connections with ski resorts in Japan. And during one summer holiday, I had like 3 months off. During summer holidays, it's like, what the hell am I going to do? I can't go to the beach every day. So my mom was like, "Hey, how do you feel about working in the ski fields for a season?" So I was like, all right. So I worked at Niseko ski fields in Hokkaido for a season. Basically just like being the janitor, like just shoveling snow, out of the front of the lobbies and like taking the trash out. And
very important jobs.
Oh, no, 100%.
I've seen many people slip in the front of lobbies.
Oh, yeah. And dude, in Niseko, where it's like snowing, 2-3 meters a day.
Crazy.
Like, if there isn't someone doing that, you can't even get out of the lodges, Yeah. So I was doing that basically 5 days a week for an entire season, so 3 months. And then from that point onwards, like, I think next year I worked at a hotel in Myoko in Niigata, and then year after that I worked at another different hotel in Niseko. So I did a couple of those odd jobs until I went to uni, and then basically, you know, as I said, like I started my YouTube channel during the first year of uni. And I was kind of doing that as kind of a hobby on top of like almost a secret hobby. I never really told anybody about my YouTube channel. Like I barely ever told my parents about it because for me, it was kind of like an experiment to see like, okay, I enjoyed the video editing course I did at uni. But when it comes to now me doing it, not necessarily just for grades, but just for fun, will I actually still enjoy it? You know? Like I enjoyed the uni course because it's like, oh, I got a good grade. And that was like a new, fresh thing that I was learning. I was learning a new skill set. But replicating that over and over and over again just for fun, like, will that actually be fun for me? So I kind of secretly did it. I didn't really tell anybody. And then, yeah, by the time I graduated uni, I got to the point where I was like, oh, I can just like make this my full-time job.
Wow.
At this point. Because I think I had like 600,000 subs by the time I finished.
That's insane growth for like just your uni years.
Yeah. So when I graduated uni, obviously my parents are like, congrats. What's the job gonna be, dog? And I was like, well, I'm thinking to move to Japan and being a YouTuber.
Wow.
And my mom was like, I'm going to kill you. I was like, I can't.
Classic.
You worked all that hard. You worked all of that in order to like what? Make videos on the internet for a living. But so my mom and I actually, so I was like, what, 22, 21? No, 21. I was 21 by the time I decided to do that. And my mom was like, all right, here's the deal. I know you're very passionate in this. I've seen the money you're bringing in. We will strike you and I will strike a deal right now. If you're able to keep doing what you're doing and, you know, keep up the income until the age of 24, I won't say anything after that. But by your 24th birthday, if you are struggling to live, I want you to quit. And I thought, okay, that's actually fair enough.
That's fair.
That is very fair.
That's very gracious, honestly.
It's very gracious, honestly. And yeah, so I was like, okay, that gives me 3 years to prove to my parents that I can legitimately turn this into a job. And so I moved to Japan. I was going to move to Japan anyway, because if YouTube never ended up becoming my job, I was going to be like a website designer at some Japanese company.
Right.
So I was going to move to Japan anyway. But obviously not to become a YouTuber. So
I would imagine back then also being a YouTuber was like, you know, super new profession.
Oh yeah.
And you know,
not to mention like doing like anime content as well. Like there is
niche of a niche of a niche.
There had literally been, but when I started doing anime YouTube, right, I didn't even know the anime YouTube community existed.
Right.
Right. Like I thought I was the only one. And then when I started making content, I realized that there were all these other people making similar content to me. But the biggest dude at the time was Gaunt, who's, you know, very good friend of mine now. But he didn't even have like 100,000 subs. So this was a niche of YouTube content that nobody in the community or outside the community even knew could legitimately be turned into a job. So I was basically going into this completely blind.
That's crazy.
And so naturally I was shitting myself.
I can imagine.
I mean, like, you know, I thought like, okay, well, I'm doing well now, but what's to say that this is just like a fluke and by this time next year, no one's going to be watching me. And I still think about that every single year.
Okay, so what like gives you the confidence at that stage to take the plunge? Like to be like, oh, I'm absolutely shitting myself. This may or may not work. Probably wouldn't work, but I'm going to do it anyway.
I think it's because after I interned at a Japanese company for the job that I thought I was going to end up in, but when I finished up that 3-month internship, I was like, damn, I don't want to fucking do that. This is not me. I don't want to sit there just fucking coding and fixing websites for the rest of my life. Like that's, you know, that completely goes against my whole like love for like creating shit. So to me, that plunge was still worth it because it even if there was like a 1% chance that this could have worked out, I would have still taken it any day of the week because it basically I can turn something I love into a job, you know, and I can make a job I love. So yeah, that was basically the reason why I just went in for it. And obviously, you know, still keeping to myself, but like experimenting with a bunch of stuff, but also like following a formula that I knew kind of worked from like all the years I watched, grew up watching YouTube of like the greats.
Absolutely.
And so I kind of like mixed that in with my own personality, and then somehow it worked. I don't know why.
Crazy.
It's so weird to me.
The rest is history.
The rest is history,
I
guess.
The entire world decided to love anime as well.
Yeah, and now it's like cool to like anime. And I'm like, dog, I got bullied for that shit growing up.
That's crazy, right?
That's fucked up.
How things have changed.
God, kids have it so easy now.
Yeah, honestly.
It's like you get bullied for like I got bullied for watching One Piece growing up.
Yeah.
Like kids today get bullied for not watching One Piece.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you only watch the mainstream shit.
I remember when I was a kid, like I used to play the Bishoujo games.
Yeah.
Like I used to like hide away and like play them in my downstairs little bedroom and not tell a soul. And I was like, I'm just having like the time of my life.
Oh,
and
dude,
like,
I played like a crap load of Aero games growing up in high school. Like that was the shit.
That was like puberty growing up. You're like, oh, this is so good.
It's like, yay, anime titties. This gameplay is insane.
That's crazy. Your journey is so interesting because I talk to, and I'm sure you do as well, but I talk to heaps of creators all the time about like the journey to becoming a full-time creator and the paths people go through and all that kind of stuff. I had Kim on the other day, Kim Dow, and she was saying how she just worked retail for ages and that like bootstrapped her into her YouTube career. And then I've heard of other people having 50 jobs and then finally finding their way. Like it's incredible actually how seamless, based on your story anyway, the transition for you was.
Right.
I mean, of course there's bumps and stuff along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
But, for you to like go from, your first year of uni, 0 subs, and then by finishing uni with 600 and enough for, something to sustain yourself with, I think that's like, there's something in that in terms of like, I don't know, an unlock for people to really pay attention to, of like how it can work over that span of time.
Yeah, I think I noticed very recently in my career, I think it was like maybe like the 5th or 6th video I ever uploaded. I uploaded this video, which was my first ever Let's Play, right, of a game. Because obviously it's 2013, everyone's doing Let's Plays.
Right.
And, guys like PewDiePie and like Game Grumps are like some of my favorite YouTube channels growing up, right? Like I watched a crap load of their content. So I wanted to be just like them, like everybody else wanted to be just like them. But I didn't want to just like be another Let's Player. I obviously had a very specific niche of games that I personally enjoyed. And so the first Let's Play I ever uploaded was of this game called Corpse Party. Do you know Corpse Party?
No, I'm not familiar.
Okay. So Corpse Party is this like indie, it started off as like an indie horror game that was created by like some Japanese dude back in like the late 90s, I think. And it got so popular in that indie scene that it got officially licensed into these series of games. And during like the mid 2010s, like there was a hardcore, like quite small but very, very dedicated fan base for this very niche game series.
Those are the best.
Yeah, which is the best, right?
That's the best.
And so as a fan of the original games myself growing up on it, I was like, oh, I found out that one of the games or a couple of the games in this franchise never got English releases. Like they were just only sold and released in Japan. And I'd never played them before. So I thought, all right, fuck it. I'm going to play the second game, Corpse Party 2, which again has no English translation, but I'm going to play it and live translate it at the same time.
Ooh.
So I would read it in Japanese so that I can understand it, and then I would repeat it back in real time in English to my audience.
That's leveraging some of your skills right there.
Right. So I was like, well, I might as well use my skills to be able to do that. And that quickly blew up in the Corpse Party community. And basically all the eyes of the Corpse Party community were on me now. And I think as well, that was also simultaneously the point where I realized that that is my one unique skill that I have, is that I'm able to do that. I'm able to play Japanese games, translate it for a live audience, or, even just like hard sub in sometimes. And so I thought like, okay, I'm put in a very unique position now when it comes to my anime content that I not only can talk about anime from the perspective of a Western audience, but I can also talk about it from the perspective of a Japanese audience. So I know how to go deep into both sides of that culture. And at the time, there really wasn't anyone doing that.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah. I mean, like, other than myself and maybe like one or two other people I know, most AniTubers can't really speak Japanese.
Yeah. Again, this is the whole like niche of a niche of a niche
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
So
Crazy.
I realized that I have this very like quite, important skill, especially when it comes to talking about Japanese subculture stuff, was the fact that I know the language and it's my first language technically. So that's basically the gimmick I've been riding on for the past 11 years, and it's worked. But people haven't figured it out yet, but I guess I just outed myself.
Yeah. I mean, look, you say that, but there's definitely more to it than just the Japanese thing. What? Obviously, like over time, especially in a decade-long career that you've had on YouTube, there are always phases. There are always like seasons that you go through. Some would be more, I guess, prevalent than others, but there's always like a kind of like secret to the success. Do you find yourself did you find yourself kind of following trends or like trying to think about how you always make your content unique all the time, aside from the Japanese stuff?
Yeah.
But like, did you always have a mindset of like, I'm going to do, instead of doing Let's Plays like everyone else, I'm going to do it but in Japanese, and then find that kind of shtick for the next thing?
Yeah. I mean, I think the one thing I've always done and I still continue to do with my content is I find it's kind of a multi-step process. So what I do is I find a type of content that might be hot or trending right now, but I don't just replicate that. I take that trend and I look at it and I go, okay, how can I add what I'm good at or what I'm known for and mix it in with this particular trend or this particular thing that's big right now to make it wholly unique to me. And so, for instance, like, with like the Let's Plays, for instance, right? Like, instead of just playing like every other game that everybody else can play, I thought like, well, I want to play a game that only I can play and only I can provide. And it's kind of like that element of surprise in a sense of like, I've always said you have to make content that your audience didn't know they wanted.
Hard to predict, but also I guess that's the skill, right?
Right, but it's also intuition. I have had way more misses than I have hits.
Of course.
I think I don't know how many videos I've released, probably over 1,200.
Yeah.
1,300 just on my Anime Man channel alone, right?
Yeah, I was just looking before this. Yeah, this is around that.
So there's obviously in that there are some big hits, yes, but majority of them are like adequate and sometimes just straight up flops. And that's because like at the end of the day, I don't know what the secret of being successful on YouTube is. I don't think anyone knows the secret, because if someone knew, then it wouldn't be a secret and everyone would be famous. And in turn, no one would be famous.
If it's easy, everyone would have done it, right?
Exactly. If it's that easy to be successful on YouTube, then everyone would be successful. But that's not how the world works, right? Yeah. Some people have big, and that's because at the end of the day, success is completely subjective, right? Like, I can look at myself in my position right now and go, okay, yeah, I think I'm fairly successful. But then there's also 1,000 other people who are more successful than I could be.
Bigger in number, or more money.
More money, or more notoriety, or more brand deals, living a better life than me, more luxury. It could be anything, right?
Pick your metric, yeah.
Exactly. But, at the end of the day, it's all about like, well, am I satisfied with where I am? If the answer is yes, then I would say I'm pretty successful. And, right now, but at the same time, right, it's scary because I think success is also something that you should never be able to achieve, because I feel that once you do achieve it, then you won't want to strive for anything.
That actually hits me so hard. And I'm not trying to like gas myself up, but I've been through this phase of like this whole photography thing for me, and like doing media stuff is my second career. So prior to this, I've had like a decade-long career being a full-stack lead product designer. And, you know, this is I've faced this kind of challenge a couple of times, but, you know, in my last career, I got up to the kind of echelons of the top designers in Sydney.
Yeah.
And in order to progress anymore, I would have had to move country, essentially. And then now with this like photography thing, it's like, okay, like I've gotten notoriety and I've hit the echelons of what some people might define as success and all those kind of things. You know, I made a ton of money, like, and then it's kind of like, oh, like what now? You know?
Yeah. You know, once you have everything, you don't want anything.
Yeah, it's crazy to like. I think the big mistake is not moving the goalposts quickly enough.
Yeah,
because once you get close to the goalpost, it's like, oh, it's so close, and you want to reach out and grab it, and then you're almost there. But then when you get it, it's elation for 5 minutes, and then, you know, a lifetime of despair. That's really dark.
I mean, in a sense, though, it is true, because it's like, you know, I think that's one of the big reasons why a lot of YouTubers kind of fall off, in a sense, you know, however you might define the term falling off. But, you know, I think it's not so much a matter of like they got boring. It's more so a matter of they became complacent with where they are. You know, like to them, they see like, oh, I'm just plenty successful enough. I'm plenty rich enough. I'm plenty whatever enough. I don't need anything else. And so when complacency comes into play, then your content starts becoming more monotonous. And, you know, audiences aren't stupid. Like, they can tell if you're watching a video, and they can see if the creator in the video does not feel like making this video, you know, or they're pushing themselves to make the video, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it's very quick and clear to see.
It's very easy to see passion.
Absolutely. You know, if someone's passionate about something, immediately you can tell that, and vice versa. Right. And so I think complacency is the killer. Can I not just like watch it because I want to watch some shows, you know? So I always so for the past like couple of years or so, I've been thinking about like how I can kind of re-spark my interest in making content where it's challenging and fun for me, and also something that maybe only I can provide, you know? So, and that's why I started doing
that whole side of things. But yeah, hopefully I think I'm kind of getting back onto the road of like I'm interviewing video editors.
Damn.
And I'm so tired,
Man's
but it's going to be.
So he used to have his own YouTube channel where he was also making anime content. And I found him and I watched his videos, and I think at the time he didn't even have like 1,000 subs, right? But how much he was editing these videos, and like he was like putting fucking After Effects on that shit like every like 20 seconds and stuff.
Damn.
for a fucking anime review, right? No one was putting that much effort in, right? And for a channel of that size, and you know, not to mention as a personality, he was funny as hell, right? He still is. And I saw that and I went, that guy is fucking awesome. He is a creator. He knows the comedic bits. You know, he knows the beat and timings of like how to structure a video and make it unique and entertaining. Visually, he knows how to like throw in funny stuff. Like his and my kind of way of making content is very similar in that sense, except he's 100 times better at editing than I ever could be. So I actually messaged him to be like, hey, I'm looking for an editor right now. I watched your videos. You're amazing. I was wondering if you would be open to editing my videos for me. And luckily he said yes. And but again, you know, as I mentioned, like the first couple of videos I did with him, you know, I would send off the video, he'd come back to me with a draft and go, how's this? And I was getting so nitpicky with so many different things because it wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. You know, maybe I'd be like, oh, you dragged out this scene for like 1 second too long, or can you put this random image at this timing instead of this timing? And it's just very, very small, minute things that, to be honest, the audience wouldn't give 2 shits about.
Right.
But I gave 2 shits about it because I was being protective of my work.
You
right?
are the creator. Yeah.
So I had to kind of come to terms with the fact that, you know, I don't want to keep being so nitpicky and asking for like 5, 6, 7 revisions, because at that point, I'm putting the time that I was editing the videos into reviewing the videos, right? And I'm not really saving any time. So I slowly, over a couple of videos, I think it took me maybe like 5-10 videos for me to finally actually start to be comfortable with just basically giving him a video, the files, maybe giving him a script that it comes with, and then just going, do whatever the fuck you want. Just be as creative as possible. Make it as funny as possible. Make it as entertaining as possible. And then the first time I did that and he brought it back, it was not exactly how I envisioned it to be. But in fact, it was anything better than I could have done as well. So I uploaded that. And a lot of people loved it. They were like, yo, the editing on this is fucking insane. It was so funny. It was so entertaining. And that's when it kind of clicked in my head where I'm like, okay, this is how you're supposed to work with editors. Like if the editor is creative enough and, you know, really wants to like test out their own strength, then the best thing to do is to just let them just go. Let them do whatever the hell they want creatively. And unless it's something like you really, really don't like or disagree with, then you can cut that out. You can ask them to cut that out, obviously. But other than that, I think it's good to see like a different perspective on how someone looks at this video and how they would work on it. Because, for example, you know, like there might be some scenes where like I personally might have cut out for whatever reason, but the editor decides to leave it in, and it turns into this whole other funny bit that you never even thought about when you were filming the video, right? So it offers you kind of a new, fresh taste on the same content. And again, it's great because now I've saved so much time on that.
And it's better.
And it's better. And he's a fucking god, you know?
It's a win-win-win.
Yeah.
And then he goes down in legend.
And now he edits now basically the entirety of the AniTube community is resting on his shoulders.
That's crazy,
you know?
man.
He's like Atlas holding up the world.
Wild. Absolutely wild.
I think he's editing for like 20 different channels, and he's doing daily vlogs.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I was like, whoa, this is a machine.
Eastern Europeans, man.
That's great. Built different.
Built diff.
Wild. That's cool. That is really reassuring. And you know, I guess the takeaway is, you know, letting people have their own creativity and getting the best out of them because you give them the freedom.
Yeah. And you know, now that I think back on it retrospectively, I'm basically doing with my editor what my parents did to me. You know, I gave them
full circle move.
It was a full circle move. Like I gave them the encouragement to go out and test their creativity and, you know, go down the rabbit hole of how they can create this certain thing in the same way that my parents did for all the things I loved, whether it be for music or whatever it is. So it works. It's honestly, if the person is, I guess, keen enough to go down that rabbit hole and is curious enough to learn and want to be better at what they do, then providing that person that kind of environment is the best thing you could do for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Very wise words there. Very wise words.
I try.
Very pertinent to me, selfishly. If you're a photographer visiting Japan, you probably want all of the most visually attractive, stunning spots to go to and photograph. And in Japan, there is most certainly no shortage of that. That is why I have been coming back to Japan nonstop since 2016 and eventually decided to also move here. But as an English speaker, finding all of the good spots is hard. And doing all of the research on how to get there, in what season, with what gear, and all of the other nuances and considerations that lead to a great image is tiring and time-consuming. So I've made it easy for you. My photography guides to Japan and Tokyo are the best-selling photography guides on the internet. And I've been doing this for many, many years. And in them, I show off all of the best spots this country has to offer and how to capture them, saving you time, money, and stress, and simplifying the planning process, enabling you to have a better time here. So if that sounds interesting, then head on over to packk.com/Japan guide to check out my photography guides to Japan and Tokyo. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Now, back to the episode. Again, selfish to me, but you coming back to the whole anime thing and stopping making anime content. There was obviously like this transition period between you making anime content and then all of a sudden making, I would say, more Japan-focused, like specifically Japan-focused content. Was there like a conscious decision to like bring your audience along for the journey, or were you just like one day being like, bam, okay, you know, I'm just gonna do this other thing? Because there's always like friction, right?
Yeah.
You know, for reference, or not even for reference, but like for context, you know, this podcast, for example, for me, my audience like initially didn't really accept it that well, and all of my other YouTube friends were like, you know, if you try something else, you know, you're going to lose all your followers and your audience is going to suffer and all that kind of stuff. So like, what was going through your mind when you were like, okay, I can't do anime anymore. I need to do something else.
I thought this is the end of my career.
Right.
Like 100%. But I've also seen personally and heard anecdotes from friends, like fellow content creator friends, of them being in the exact same situations where they've, you know, inadvertently pigeonholed themselves into a specific type of content, and they got burnt out on that content, or they maybe explored and decided to pursue a different type of passion in the same field. And yeah, it's a really scary transitional moment because, you know, you think to yourself, well, I managed to garner this audience that likes me when I do this particular thing. So it creates this weird illusion in your brain of, are the people here for my content or are they here for me? And, you know, in the earlier stages, it doesn't really matter because you're just trying to gain a following no matter what, right? But if you're trying to sell yourself as a personality, especially, you know, if you're like a top 10 channel, then it's like, who the fuck cares, right? They're obviously there for the content.
Yeah.
They're not going to be there for like, oh, the woman narrator. Like, you know, it's nothing like that. But if you're selling yourself as a personality, it really does create this illusion of like, you know, are they there for me or are they there for just my videos? And for me, the really reassuring thing and the one thing that made me kind of break that illusion was Trash Taste. Because Trash Taste is unlike any of our personal channels. Like, we barely talk about anime on that show, even though we call ourselves an anime podcast, right?
Love it. Irony.
But we saw that and we realized that, oh, people love it when we just talk about whatever. It could be anything. And that reassured to me, oh, people like me for me. People don't just like me for necessarily the anime content. Sure, there might be a percentage of those people who were only there for the anime content, but they weren't going to be longtime fans regardless. You know, they would have probably moved on to someone else, right? So that's what gave me the confidence boost to know that as long as I'm providing them stuff that is good quality or even better quality than before and is somewhat related to anime, like, if you like anime,
you like a whole bunch of
most likely than not, you like Japan.
Yeah.
Or you're interested in Japan.
It's not that far of a jump.
It's not that far of a jump, right? Yeah. So that's why like the shift for me was not as scary as say like making, you know, going from anime to like real estate. Like, you know, it's just like where it's like, whoa, where did that come from, you know? But so my transition, and I also kind of played it safe in the sense that I did consciously decide to definitely stop anime content, but I decided not to just like cut it off like immediately. What I did was I kind of faded it out. So, you know, I would go from maybe like 3 anime videos a month and maybe 1 non-anime video to then 2 anime videos a month and then 1 anime video a month and then 1 every couple of months and just like slowly fade it out.
Man, that's a fucking 5-head strategy.
Yeah,
right?
because, you know, in YouTube time, right, 1 month is like a year.
Yeah, honestly,
it's a long time, right? So if you stretch it out for that long, like over the course of like 6 months, for instance, then by the time you actually fully stop doing that content you were doing, people don't even realize it. At least hopefully they're not, as long as they're enjoying that new content, right? And in my case, luckily, I won the gamble on that. And a lot of people at first were like, oh, this is not I don't know how this is related to anime, but this was still a cool video and I want to see more of this. And so you're kind of just like, it's like exposure therapy, you know, you just like exposing them over and over again. Just dip the toe in a couple of times. And then, yeah, exactly. You know, like, and I was basically just doing that with contents. And I think that's the best way for any creator who wants to transition away from something.
Noted. Yeah. I definitely did the opposite of that.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was like, damn, this bloke fucking uploads 3 episodes back to back.
Okay, so I did that because of Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so because of that, actually, like I hit #1 for visual arts in like 15, 17 different countries,
right
like
on.
all of, which is great.
Hell yeah.
But on YouTube, it's like, what the fuck is this guy doing? But yeah, that's been an interesting thing because I think I don't know if you think about this much, but different channels have different like kind of how would you describe like I guess overarching themes or categories. You know, you talk a lot about personality, but there's a whole bunch of YouTube channels out there that are more about the content itself and like the education.
Sure.
I think my channel is definitely more about the content.
Yeah.
Less about me as a personality. They can care less if like it was someone else and whatever, as long as the content is like delivered in a certain way.
See, I kind of disagree on that.
Okay.
I think you're in the same category as like, you know, Marcus Brownlee and like all those guys.
Right.
In the sense that, yes, people are there for the educational part. In your case, you know, in Marcus's case, it's the review of the product. In your case, it's whatever you're trying to teach and the skills you're trying to teach. But I think in the overarching sense, I think they kind of fall under the same umbrella category of like, it's there was a term for it, I remember. It was edutainment.
Yeah.
That's the word.
That's it. Yes.
You know?
I was looking for that too.
You're definitely in the edutainment category of like, yes, people can go, but that I think is the one of the strongest categories you could be in, because you're basically getting best of both worlds. You're getting the people who just want to learn about like, you know, 5 tips and tricks, but then at the same time, you also give them enough space to like get them to know you as well. So, you know, you're kind of appealing to everybody right now and just kind of opening your arms wide to everyone and waiting for the people to embrace you, you know, if that makes sense, right? And, you know, that's kind of the direction that I've been going in as well with these interviews, for instance. Like, I was definitely before a lot more personality-based with when it just came to, like, my straight-up anime content. But I've always wanted to make videos where it's like, I want people to come away from the video with something.
Sure.
Like anything. Even if it's a negative reaction, that's still something, you know?
Something valuable.
Yeah.
At least.
Because I think like, you know, when it comes to like any kind of like art or anything, you know, the biggest cardinal sin that any piece of art can provide is nothing. You know, no emotion, no reaction, nothing to take away from. A negative reaction is still better than no reaction, in my opinion.
True. Yeah, very true.
And that's not to say like go ahead and make a bunch of rage bait videos or anything like that, but you know what I mean? Like, you know, at least like give them some, you know, purpose for them to watch the video and give them something to take away from. You know, so in my case, like on my second channel, I cover a lot of like Japan news related stuff. Yeah, and not every single story I cover, people are going to necessarily agree with, but it starts a conversation. You know, it starts a conversation not just with me and the viewer, but also amongst the viewers, right? In like comment sections or anything like that. And I think that is successful in terms of creating something, right? Like you're starting a movement, no matter how small it might be.
There's still an opinion. There's still you know, a position to latch on to.
Exactly. And I think like, you know, especially in the anime community, one of the other reasons why I got burnt out on it is because, you know, honestly, the anime community just turned into a bunch of pussies.
Oh, damn.
I'm calling them out, man. I like straight up, like, you know, before I could say an opinion about a show and people would be like, hey, you know what? I kind of disagree, but I understand that is your opinion. Just because you think it's bad doesn't mean I have to think it's bad. We can agree to disagree. And I'll be like, all right, fair enough. Thank you very much.
Great.
You know? But nowadays, bro, like, you know, I'm known as the guy who says that like Jujutsu Kaisen is just okay. And people look at me like I just like murdered their family or something, you know? Like, I'm sorry. I don't think it's as good as people say it is, but you don't have to listen to me.
Yeah,
I'm just one dude. But, you know, but then people go on and be like, oh yeah, but you have like a voice in the community. I'm like, Yeah, but I didn't choose to have that.
No.
That's you guys. That's your prerogative, you know? I'm just going to say whatever the hell I want to say.
But also that says more about the community that they think that way than anything else.
Yeah.
You know, it is the people who are like, you know, upvoting Free Ren to take over Full Metal Alchemist kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know? It's like,
you know,
like why? You know,
it's all about hype now.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's very evident in the fact that, you know, there might be some of the most like biggest successful like seasonal shows that come out, like Free Ren, for instance. I mean, Free Ren, it's still difficult to say because it just finished or is finishing.
No, it was great.
Oh, I loved it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But like, you know, do you remember like My Dress Up Darling?
I do actually.
Do you remember everyone talking about that?
Yeah.
Do you know a single person who's talking about it now?
Absolutely not.
Exactly. But back then, everyone was like, this is going to be the show that people fucking talk about for the next decade.
It comes in waves, doesn't it? It's the hype wave.
It's the TikTok brain.
Yeah, honestly.
It's the TikTok brain. But that's what was so exciting about when I started anime content was that in the mid 2010s, there weren't as much people talking about the shows because it wasn't something that was trendy whatsoever, right? It was one of those things of like digging in the dirt and then hoping you find a diamond kind of deal, right? So now it's turned into a jewelry store. It's about like it's all lined up neatly, and you're like, okay, I can pick and choose. Oh, this is the most popular one. Okay, I'm gonna pick that then. I'm not gonna care about all these other ones, right? Like the mystique of it is gone. But I think that's why. But I think that whole mystique and the niche audience is what drove people to talk about shows years and years after they were finished airing. You know, like people still talk about shows like Full Metal Alchemist, for instance, right? Or like Cowboy Bebop, or like those what are considered classics now, right? Yeah. And look, I might be wrong on that. Free Ren might be talked about in 20 years from now. I don't know. But I'm saying all of this with the notion of this is just my opinion. And I don't claim to know the truth. This is just what I observe. But the audience sometimes just doesn't understand that, whether it be because parasocially they just, you know, swallow every word that I say, or because, I don't know, they don't know how to formulate their own opinion.
I think that is so now. That is so 2020s, 2024s. Like, I hate the term, but like, in Asia, they use the term KOL a lot, like key opinion leader, as the replacement word for like influencer or whatever. But effectively, that's kind of what the industry is kind of turning into,
basically. Which
kind of sucks because then you have like, sure, you have. We've always had influencers, you know, celebrities, people on TV, you know, the old school person smoking the cigarette of a Marlboro, and then suddenly everyone smokes Marlboros and all that kind of stuff, right? But your own individual critical thinking goes away.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real shame. And I see that even in the photography and videography community now. It's like, what is the best camera?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Yeah, then, I need someone to tell me.
Yeah, and then like preach it out to everyone, please. And then if someone doesn't agree with you, no, you're fucking wrong because you're stupid and dumb.
Yeah.
Like,
well, but that happens in anime all the time. You know, I will say like, oh, you like this show that I don't like? Please give me your explanation as to why you think it's good. I'm not saying it to like, you know, egg you on. I genuinely want to know, as someone who likes to think about things in a critical lens, especially things like anime, I genuinely want to know the opposite opinion. So that, because I've had many times where like, you know, I would talk about shows that, you know, maybe I disagree on with another person whose opinion I greatly, you know, respect and listen to. And they've given me some points that have actually made me rethink about a show or rethink about a segment of a show. And that's great. It's cool. Like that builds experience, that builds knowledge, and it deepens your understanding for the content, right? But 99 times out of 100, I will pose the question of, you don't like you like this show that I don't like? Please explain your reasoning. And they just go, oh, because it's really good. Or you just hate it because it's popular. And I'm like, what? So why are you getting on my ass for giving you my reasoning for my opinion when you can't do the same?
Even create an opinion of your own. Please. Like, crazy. Absolutely wild.
Yeah. And I think that was that on top of, you know, many other reasons was why I decided to kind of step away from, I guess, the forefront of making anime content. And I'm trying to get back into it, but not so much like get back into the spotlight, but just kind of stand on to the side of the stage and being like, hey, by the way, check this out every now and then, please.
So would it be safe to say that's your approach kind of moving forward when it comes to your anime content? You're going to be
definitely more edutainment.
Yeah. And a little bit like less mainstreamy and
yeah. I mean, the video will probably be out by the time this comes out, so I can tell you, but I'm releasing a video called The Entire History of Manga Explained.
Oh, right.
Where basically for 57 minutes or however long that video is, like an hour long.
Damn.
I go through chronologically the history of how manga came to be and like the different movements of manga, but do it in front of a green screen and throw in a lot of jokes in the midst of it. Right. And I think that'll be something that, you know, you can learn from if you're interested in the subculture. Maybe you can learn something new. Maybe you can discover a manga series you've never heard of. But hopefully my jokes will be funny enough to where people can watch it and just like enjoy a funny video essay of the history of something.
That's such an interesting approach to an interesting mix up to what you've done previously. It's still anime, manga related, but slightly adjacent / more educational.
Yeah. And I've definitely taken off a lot of inspiration from all the interviews I've done in that sense, where it's like, it's more geared towards, I guess, not so much following the trend, but more so just trying to sell something that is not popular to make it popular is like a really fun challenge for me. Like to get people to care about something they have never heard of or never thought to give any like time towards. That's fun for me to do.
Yeah.
You know, because like in that history of manga video, 99% of the manga series I bring up, guaranteed majority of people never heard of it. Because, you know, it's just part of the history of the lineage, right? But I want to talk about them and get people to care. And if I can successfully do that with this video, then I've successfully done what I've set to do. And that's really fun for me. And it keeps the passion going for me.
Right.
You know?
That's very interesting. I need to find that. That's very inspiring.
Is it?
It really is. No, like, again, you know, look, we're most certainly on like different trajectories in terms of like overall time on platform and growth and all the rest of it. But like the story and the sentiment for me is so similar.
Right.
With my YouTube journey anyway, that it makes me think a lot about like the photography industry on YouTube is just so copycatty because especially in the education space, there's only so many times, only so many ways you can teach aperture and shutter speed and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Like it's quite difficult. So and everyone ends up copying each other with like the formulas of what works and you see it all the time. People just recycling the same video, and that this happens for any
of course,
you know, category, but it's very vicious in photography. And it is very interesting thinking about, okay, how can I like do something that's a little bit like still photography related, but you know, tangential and still educational, but still entertaining at the same time. Definitely a lot of takeaways.
And I think it's always fun to like kind of experiment and figure out like, well, one, what is something that I can provide to this like subculture that hasn't been provided yet, and two, is it something that I'm even capable of doing? And trying to find like the middle of that Venn diagram is just
that's the money.
That's the money shot right there. It was like it was placed there for me to fill it in, you know? And it's great. Yeah.
Nice. Switching gears a little bit. You know, you talked about Trash Taste a little bit. I saw your video about getting on Australian TV.
Oh yeah. On the ABC.
Man, you did pretty well.
Bro, I was nervous as shit.
You said you were super nervous and like really awkward. It was good. It was good.
Oh, thank you, man.
It was good. But I think, Trash Taste is like this, has become this like just mega giant like in the podcasting space.
Again, I don't know how the fuck it happened.
I think it's crazy, you know. What is it like? So I've been following you guys since the beginning. You know, I watched episode 1 when it first released, and you know, although I haven't watched a lot of the episodes recently, I've been there since.
I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much YouTube I can watch.
Yeah, for sure.
I've seen the growth, and the growth has been so tremendous and really inspiring, to the point where, you know, you guys are doing live shows and specials and going to Hawaii and doing all this really crazy, really cool stuff. How is the transition been for you for this amount of rapid growth? Have you had to like reassess your own, you know, styles as a creator, or like even the way you approach content? Is there like pressure for the next video or like the next special? You guys just did a live tour, you know, that must have been very nerve-wracking as well.
I mean, in terms of just like Trash Taste, I mean, I obviously can't speak on behalf of the other two boys, but for me personally, the only thing I worry about is that I don't want to be tugging on the legs of the other two boys and like dragging them back with how I contribute to the show.
Right.
So like in that sense, yes, I'm very conscious about like how I act. Like I don't want to do or say or act in a manner on or off camera that will get the other two boys or anyone else involved that works with us, because we now have a team for that will get them to like not enjoy doing Trash Taste. Right. So there's like definitely responsibility in that now. But in terms of like how I position myself in Trash Taste, I am, and not just in Trash Taste, but just in anything, I am very unapologetically myself. You know,
that's the best way to be.
Yeah. Like this is just who I am. If you fuck with that, then cool. And if you don't, that's also totally cool. I can't please everyone in the world. So, you know, in that sense, like it is kind of pressuring in that sense, because now it's not just like me and my channel anymore. There is co-hosts and, you know, employees and, you know, sponsors and, you know, companies and tours and all that kind of stuff that are involved. There's so much more people involved now that I need to care about and take care of, that it is a little more, I guess, frightening in that sense of, I don't want to like let these people down. But at the same time, because we all have each other's backs and we're all constantly pushing each other to like do new things. Like, you know, we did the America and Europe tour last couple of years, or like, you know, we did the Hawaii special, which was like probably the most insane video I've ever been a part of. Personally.
It was wild, man.
It's fucking insane. I was so glad we pulled that off. But like, you know, it's again providing that environment of getting you to actually care about and wanting to continue to push yourself forward in whatever it might be. So like, you know, the reason why we decided to do the tour is because we wanted to challenge ourselves to see, can we still be funny on stage? You know, we know how to be entertaining and funny on camera because we've all been doing it for so many years, but doing the same thing in front of a live audience on stage, completely different skill set.
Absolutely.
And that is a skill set that all three of us wanted to have or wanted to try and grow, you know, because it might be important. You never know, right? And so that was one of the big reasons why we did the tour. And we definitely weren't amazing at it at first, obviously, because it's very nerve-wracking, you know, suddenly from 3 cameras to,
you know, people.
Well, London was our biggest show, and that was 2,800.
Damn, man.
Yeah, at the Apollo of all places. So yeah, I mean, like, you know, going from that to that was very like, oh, okay, this is different. This is I have to get all the stops out on this and make sure that I'm nailing everything and making sure that I'm being entertaining. And for me, I definitely have always wanted to like get better at like having stage presence, because growing up I had an absolute fear of public speaking. Like I could not do public speaking. I absolutely hated public speaking. But I've always wanted to get over that and challenge myself to it, because I knew that if I really knuckled down and tried, I might be like somewhat capable of it. But after the first couple of tries, you know, I was definitely like, after each show, learning new things like, oh, okay, you know, it's important to not just like stand still on stage. It's good to like move around and use your hands. And after I went to go watch Beetlejuice on Broadway in New York,
okay,
I learned so much from that one performance on how to perform on stage. And so from the next shows onwards, I would kind of utilize that by like, you know, really using my expressions and, you know, stopping and starting speech to like deliver, you know, tension in speech and stuff like that. And I feel like I got a lot better at it by the end of the tour. And it's great because that exact skills I can use in my videos, you know.
Absolutely.
And not all of it necessarily, but a lot of it I can still utilize in videos. So like, you know, I've always been, I guess, as you call it, Renaissance man in that sense of I've always wanted to be able to do so many different things because it's, I think, again, monotony is the killer. You know, I didn't want to just like do like one thing for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely relate with that and getting good at certain things. It's very to backtrack. Are you an introvert by nature? Do you identify with being an introvert or maybe more of an extrovert?
I'd say maybe slightly more extroverted than introverted, but I like being inside as well.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. I like being in my room playing areas. No human contact whatsoever. I enjoy that.
Yeah, interesting. Because like, you know, for me, the thought of doing a live show is like, as an introvert, is like, oh my God, that's like an immense amount of energy, an immense amount of like effort, but absolutely rewarding. Definitely, most certainly, like definitely worth doing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's a skill set I've always wanted to learn as well. Yeah, it's.
I mean, if you want to learn that skill set, man, honestly, the best thing is to just fucking do it.
Fucking do it.
There's only so many videos and textbooks you can read and watch to like learn how to be a better speaker. But if you don't put it to practice,
of course not.
Nothing.
What is it like interacting with your fans in a live setting versus, you know, the everyday life of being a YouTuber?
Well, I'd say there's very minimal interaction in the daily life of a YouTuber because, you know, being an English-speaking channel in Japan, you don't really get as recognized as often as, say, like an American YouTuber in America, right? But I enjoy that because I'm very much the kind of person who, yes, does like being on camera, does like sharing certain aspects of my life with my audience because I know that they are mature enough to take it in and respect it. But at the same time, I like my privacy. You know, I don't share everything about myself online, and I kind of want to keep it that way. But I mean, with my fans personally, they're just like me in the sense that they're just chill. They don't really see me as like this like person in the clouds that is like untouchable or whatever. Like they just treat me like a dude in front of a camera, which I think is, I don't want anything more than that. Like that is the perfect situation for me. Like I remember I was out shopping with my mom when I was back in Sydney, in you know, wherever we were in the mall, and there was like a kid just like sitting at the bench, just like hunched over like this on his phone, and he looks up and he just goes, "Sup, Joey?" And I was like, "Hey, man." Just didn't stop. I just walked past him. And my mom was like, "Oh, was that your friend?" And I'm like, "I don't know who that guy is." But like, you know, it's that kind of like just casual, I guess, relationship that I have with my audience where like, you know, granted, not everyone is like that. Some people are parasocial as fuck. Some people treat me like a god, but like that's nothing, you know, that's out of my control. Right. But for the most part, I think I try to give off the vibe of I'm not better than anyone. I'm not worse than anyone. I'm just like everyone else, except I've just been talking to a camera for 11 years. That's the only difference.
It's very grounded.
Yeah, because there's nothing like, you know, there are no demerits to being grounded. I think
there's only merits.
There's only merits.
Only merits.
And there's only demerits to not being grounded, you know? And it like, I don't know how to not be grounded, if that makes sense. Like when I look at these like other content creators who aren't as grounded or at least show themselves or pose themselves in videos as not being grounded and thinking they're like fucking better than everyone else, whether they like it or not. I'm like, how do you do that? Like, actually, how do you do that? Like, I'm not saying it as like in a moral question. Like, I'm legitimately saying like practically,
like skill
set wise, how do you do that? Because I don't know how to do that. And I guess that's like that denseness of me, I guess, is like a blessing, you know, kind of dressed as a curse.
Yeah, right.
Where like it has managed to like keep me grounded. And, you know, obviously my partner and my family have like also helped me to just like not always be thinking about work and actually going outside and touching some grass every now and then, you know, and it's been a great, I think I've finally kind of figured out the work-life balance that works for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What is that?
For me, it's, I said this in a video once, but you know when there's like YouTubers who sit there and they go like, guys, you know, I've taken a break for a couple of months, these last couple of months. You know, I don't want to think about YouTube. I don't want to think about work, all that kind of stuff. So I've been really enjoying just going out and just hanging out with my friends. But all those friends are also content creators.
Okay.
And I'm like, you didn't go on a break. You finished work, you went outside, and you went to hang out with your coworkers. That's not taking a break. That's just moving location. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah.
So
that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. So like, you know, when you finish work, right? Sure, you might be like really friendly with your coworkers, but you have friends, well, most people in the world hopefully have friends outside of work, right? That they know from somewhere completely not related to work, right? That feels different to hanging out with coworkers, you know? That same logic can be applied to YouTubers hanging out with other YouTubers, where it's like, I don't hate hanging out with YouTubers. Obviously, I have a lot of friends who are YouTubers and that, you know, we've known each other long enough and respect personally that I treat them like any other friend. But at the end of the day, they're still your coworker, whether you like it or not. So to really kind of step away, as so-called, then you need to be hanging out with people that have nothing to do with that. So in my case, I hang out with my friends who have nothing to do with YouTube, you know, nothing to do with like online content creation. Or at least if they do, then they're not like doing it full time. You know, maybe they're doing it as just like a hobby.
Yeah.
And what that does is that it really forces you to just like actually stop thinking about work.
Disengage.
Completely disengage. Because whether you like it or not, when you put two YouTubers in a room, they're going to start talking about YouTube. Eventually. Even if they make completely different content, they're eventually going to start talking about content.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? And that's not stepping back.
No.
You know?
It's just changing context.
Exactly.
Really. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just, you're just basically doing what you've already been doing, but off camera.
Yeah.
You know? And to me, I don't think that's the proper way of taking a step back. I think taking a step back is literally putting yourself in a position where you almost forget that you're a content creator. And you go out, and in my case, I would go out and go and hang out with my girlfriend, go and hang out with my family, go and hang out with my friends, like actual non-content creator friends. Like I was almost purposefully avoiding hanging out with content creators when I took a little bit of a break earlier this year, because I actually wanted to disengage. And that's a really difficult thing to do. But I think it's also super, super important because that is the number one way, at least that I have found, that keeps me grounded. When you find those people that don't give a shit about what you do and just treat you like a human.
Like a real person before you've done the thing and gotten famous or whatever. And
that's why, like, you know, I still very much highly value and keep in touch with my friends from high school and my friends from uni and my childhood friends, because they've known me for years before I ever became the Anime Man. They've always just known me as Joey. And when I hang out with people like that, I just get this like really nice sense of humbleness, of like, oh man, I kind of miss this. Like I actually missed feeling like a human, weirdly. I feel like, because it's weird, right? Because it's like, you know, after you meet so many people who are like fans of your work, it almost becomes like, I don't know, it almost becomes like desensitizing.
Yeah.
To like, who was I again? Like, am I, oh yeah, I'm the Anime Man.
You get lost in your own sauce.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I'm Joey from Trash Taste. But then you're just like, and you start to think to yourself, like, have I been doing this all my life? Because it certainly feels that way. Have I always been Joey from Trash Taste? Have I always been the Anime Man? Like, no, obviously not. But when you hear that over and over and over again, right? And, you know, this is no jab at like the people, like fans who approach me or anything. Like, I fucking appreciate the shit out of it. This is just a me issue.
Yeah. I think this is a very common issue amongst a lot of like, you know, people who have been on the platform for a very, very long time. Like,
totally.
You do get lost in your own environment, especially if you do see some level of success. It's like, you know, it almost becomes your new reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, and I feel the people who are like drowning in that new environment are the people who end up not becoming grounded anymore. You know, because they don't know what grounded is anymore, right? They think like, oh, everybody around me is praising me. Everybody around me loves me. I must be the shit, you know? Whereas like, sure, you might be the shit in your own world.
But step outside a second.
But hold on, man. It's not like you've cured cancer or anything, you know? Like, you just make videos on the internet. There are lots of people like you out there. Like, so just step off your high horse for a quick second and, like, reevaluate and think retrospectively about who you are, you know? And I think, again, like, this is one problem that I see amongst a lot of YouTubers and content creators, which I really wish people would stop doing, is that they put so much of their self-worth into their success.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, like, it's the age-old thing of, like, you know, you've heard so many people saying that, like, don't put all your self-worth into your success. It's not just because you have high numbers, it doesn't mean you're better than anyone. But there are still lots of people who fall into that trap, you know?
Well, it is easier to fall into. Like,
very much so.
You know, it is the razzle and dazzle of, like, notoriety that everyone biologically, evolutionarily craves.
Yeah.
You know, we are a status seeking species.
But that's, again, another reason why I think it's so important when you are stepping back from content for a little bit to not hang out with other content creators.
Yeah.
And to get you to realize that these friends I'm hanging out with, my family that I'm hanging out with, these people who have nothing to do with content creation, who I'm hanging out with, actually still like me. Oh, so I do have some self-worth in actually myself that is completely separate from my success. And I think once you understand that, that is the biggest shortcut to grounding yourself again. And in a sense, making sure that you're not another dickhead celebrity. You know?
Absolutely. It is pretty crazy. I think, you know, I've seen it as well. You know, I haven't been in the game as long as you, but the countless amounts of creators, especially in the age of like in short form content, right? Instagram, that whole like Reels saga just blew everyone up.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to see the effect that, like, you know how people say when you come into money, it just like amplifies who you really are. It's the same with fame. You know, if you're an asshole and you have 0 followers and you get 500,000 subs or whatever, you're probably still going to be you're going
to be a bigger asshole.
Yeah. Like, you're not just going to magically turn and be a saint, right?
Straight
like,
up. Yeah.
It's been really, really interesting to watch because, you know, I have always questioned, like, what is it all for? You know, very existential question, I know, but like, what are you doing with the fame? Like, what are you doing with the success? What are you doing with the money? And then, you know, is it going to a place that humbles you, keeps you grounded, gives value to other people? Or is it going to your ego and, you know?
Well, I think for a lot of people, it really does just like snowblind them in the sense that like they don't have to think about where they're heading because where they are right now is the shit, you know? But like that's the scary thing. And, you know, I've always like lived by this quote that my dad used to tell me, which is, I would rather be broke with a lot of friends than rich and no friends. You know, there is nothing more sad than a rich old person with no friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and that really struck a chord with me because as someone who does really like respect friendships and respect like and really value human connection in any level, like that really did like hit me when I did actually start to make, you know, some decent money for myself. Where I'm like, okay, I need to make sure that this doesn't get to my head. I need to make sure that I don't fall into that exact same trap that thousands of people among history have fallen into. And so that's why I really needed to like scramble to find that work-life balance that works for me. Because otherwise I'd just be all in work. I'd be probably getting a lot more money than I'm currently making now, but I would know, just retrospectively looking at it, I would probably be mad depressed and just mad sad. Like
it's crazy the amount of creatives that I've met where their entire life is just all content.
Yeah.
They have no hobbies. They have no outside interests. They don't pursue anything else except for content. Yeah. And even if they go out, they're going out to get content. And it's wild, the kind of balanced shift that people have, you know.
I just want to tell these people, you don't have to monetize your entire life.
No.
If anything, you shouldn't. Don't monetize your entire life.
Keep some privacy, please.
Keep some privacy, please. And look, if you're and you know, you're definitely right on that, because I personally know a couple of people who are exactly like that, where they just all the time they're just constantly thinking about content. And they don't have any like so-called hobbies or anything like that. Some of them just straight up don't even have like people to hang out with. And I just look at that and I just like, man, why did you get yourself into that?
Yeah, what's it
like?
for?
What is all the money and fame worth it for you?
Yeah,
because it certainly doesn't fucking feel like it to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would much rather I would take away all of that fame and money in a heartbeat if I found myself in that position. I'd be like, press the go back button. Yeah, you know, like let me
undo. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. On that, you know, is money something you think about a lot? So for context, you know, this podcast again is all about finding
how to make money.
No, not even how to make money, but like, I mean, sure, partly. Look, the money's always involved in some way.
I'm teaching how to get on the grind.
But, you know, sharing how much people, especially creators, successful creators, think about the businesses that they make. And, you know, you obviously have a lot of different avenues of revenue.
I thought you were going to say you obviously have a lot of money.
I mean, I don't know how much money you have.
I was like, wait, how do you know?
I can assume. But like, is revenue and like generating, you know, business, like, do you think of your content creator career like a business, or do you just kind of just go with the flow and kind of just make things as you go and then try and work things out later? Or like, especially with nonsense, for example, you know, did you go into that with the intention of like, I want to make clothes and a streetwear brand and make some money off it? Or like, was it a pure money thing and be like, you know, I'm gonna make a line here? Or was it like just pure passion? Like, you know, do you think about the creative entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
Wow, tongue twister. Often.
Oh, I mean, you know, when it comes to my YouTube channel, for instance, at first I treated it like my resume, in the sense that I didn't think, when I actually started to make this into my full-time job, like my 3rd or 4th year into making content, I always treated my channel like a resume, because I thought I wouldn't be able to do this for the rest of my life, or at least the rest of my like adolescent life, right? You know, I thought I was going to lose that bet with my mom, or like, when I hit 24, I'm not going to be doing this, right? And I have to go find a job. So I always treated my channel as a resume of, these are the things that I'm good at. These are the skills that I have. You know, this is the things that I have created in the past, so that I can show them, I can be proud enough to show that to a future employee for whatever it is it might be, and they'll be able to respect it. But then when I won that bet with my mom and I realized maybe I could do this for a little bit longer than she and I both anticipated, obviously, and, you know, I started to hire like editors, and, you know, now I have like, you know, Luke, who's like my, you know, personal camera guy, and I have like a PA and all these people now that I have to like take care of. It definitely turned into a business after that. Of like, but, you know, at the same time, I've never really thought too deeply about the money. I mean, obviously the money is important because I have employees to pay, and I have bills to pay, and, you know, I have to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not like something to like completely ignore, you know? But for me, first and foremost is, do I enjoy the thing that I do? do I still enjoy making content, regardless of how much money I'm making? The answer to that so far is still yes. And, you know, when I decided to start Nonsense, it was kind of in the same vein of like, I want to like really refresh and challenge myself creatively in an aspect and industry that I, prior to starting it, had no fucking knowledge of whatsoever. Like, I didn't know how to run a business. I fucking worked in a ski field and made videos my entire life. That's all the business I've ever done in my life, right? But, you know, I wanted to start that purely for the passion of, I really like streetwear. I really like making clothes. I really got into fashion after moving to Japan. I want to see if I can challenge myself to that. And in the case with Nonsense, like, I didn't want to just do like YouTuber merch, you know, of just like, oh, just fucking put Anime Man on a t-shirt and slap it on a t-shirt and sell it off for $20.
That's the common path most people go down.
And, you know, I did that a couple of times early in my career, you know, because everyone was doing it, right? But I wanted to do something a little bit different and actually show people that, you know, just because you're a YouTuber doesn't mean that you can't seamlessly go into other completely unrelated industries, right? Like, you know, because being a YouTuber has always had this, I guess, weird stigma of like, once you're a YouTuber, you're always going to be a YouTuber. Like, you could go on and like have a music career or be in movies, but at the end of the day, these people in traditional media are always going to look at you as just the guy on YouTube, the YouTuber.
You're a YouTube singer or you're a YouTube actor. Like,
they don't treat you in the same way as people who organically only, you know, made it into those particular industries, right? So in the case with like clothing, for instance, I'm definitely not the first YouTuber to make their own clothing brand. And I'm most likely won't be the last either. But I wanted to like really challenge myself to be like, okay, am I able to make something that I can that I start, but I can completely separate my personality from? And that's a big reason why Nonsense has, design-wise and ethos-wise, has absolutely nothing to do with me as a person. Because I figured that eventually, you know, YouTube and like personalities on YouTube are going to die down. Like, you, me, everyone on the platform eventually is going to fall off, whether you like it or not. That's just how the world works, right? And so at that point, it's like, okay, well then, if people stop caring about me, and if I put all of my personality into this clothing brand, then they're going to stop caring about the clothing brand too, because I'm too attached to it as a person. So if I try and separate myself from that completely and just try and build something from scratch that's just dope, and that people will like and care about, regardless of if they know me or not, then my mission is successful. Like, my ultimate goal with Nonsense is I want to be able to get Nonsense to the point where I could be anywhere in the world and I will walk past someone on the street wearing a Nonsense shirt, but they have no idea who I am.
That's the goal. Yeah, that's the dream.
That's
man.
the dream.
Honestly,
for me, that's the dream for me. Like, they fucking love Nonsense. They buy the clothes. They, you know, respect the brand, everything like that. But they look at me and they go, I don't know who you are. That if I can get Nonsense to that point, I'm satisfied. Right. Like, all the money and all the business aspects and all that kind of stuff, that comes second after all of that. And luckily, I've been able to find a bunch of people who listen to my crazy pipe dream in that sense and was like, yeah, that sounds like something I'll put my entire lifeline on. Yeah, so now Nonsense we have 11 employees now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
12, I think, 11 now, including me.
That's a really fast growth for a business.
And after, it will be 2 years next year. So
crazy.
It's grown at a tremendous amount. And honestly, like, I give all the credit to the other people in the company. Like, I was kind of just like the catalyst that set it off, but all of the hard work and all the, you know, the behind the scenes work just goes to my team. And I remember I said this to one of my friends the other day, because we had like a little like Nonsense like get together. Like, we had like a barbecue in Shinjuku to like kind of celebrate 2 years.
Nice.
And you know, we were just hanging out and everything. And I told my business partner, I was like, you know me, I'm not the type of person to brag about myself. But if there's one talent that I think I can very openly brag about is that I think my biggest talent is being able to find people who can do the job I wanted to do 100 times better than I ever could. I'm just good at that. And that's not like something I learned from like reading a book or like watching videos. That's just like how I am as a person.
Yeah.
I like
life experience, man.
Yeah, I like talking to people. I like getting to know them. I like, hearing about like what they like, what passions they have, what dreams, aspirations they have, and then sharing my, the same things to them, from me, and creating that like mutual understanding. And again, finding people who I can impassion and make them care about something,
right?
And that's kind of like what I do with my YouTube videos as well, right? Like to get someone to care about something that they otherwise maybe didn't care about. I think I'm just good at that. And that's one thing. And evidently, and I think that's one thing that I can openly and proudly say about myself.
It's a very coveted skill, honestly.
Other than that, I'm just an idiot in front of a camera.
I mean, you say that, but there's only so many times you can say that with the amount of successes that you've had. It's like, this guy is just playing you, he's hustling you.
I'm trolling all of you, dog.
What? Yeah, it's super interesting for me to hear. This is my 4th business, so I've done a bunch of businesses in the past, and I like the act of building businesses. It is a fun thing for me, so I love hearing about it. What is your like daily kind of involvement for Nonsense at the moment? Like
right now, it's basically just doing internal checks on designs. They go like, "Hey, Joey, new design idea. What do you think? New project idea. What do you think?" I talk about that with a bunch of people, and then just honestly, for me, it's just a long, hard brainstorming session with myself of how can I evolve where we're going? How can we like take the next step? What new ventures can I take this business that maybe is fashion related, maybe isn't fashion related. I don't know. But yeah, I'm constantly thinking about like how to continue evolving whatever it is I'm doing. And the same thing can be said with like YouTube videos as well, right? Like what's the next idea that I have that will be completely different, but will be just as fun and satisfying for me creatively. And yeah.
Always steering the ship.
Yeah.
What does a day in your life look like nowadays?
Depends on the day of the week, really.
I think, I asked that a lot of like creators.
Today I woke up hungover as shit. Went to Shibuya, and then I came here.
Do you find yourself working a lot like these days on content and
kind of on and off? I think. Yeah. I think I found like my limit of like how much I work in a week before I'm like, you know what? Maybe no work for the next week.
Right.
I always, again, I think I found out my perfect work-life balance. So I'd say nowadays I'm probably like working full-time, like maybe 4 or 5 times a week. Okay. And then the other 2 days of the week at least, I just completely shut off and go like, I'm not going to think about work. I'm not even going to be inside. I'm going to be out and about with my partner, with mates, wherever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very important skill to have. I will work myself to death and not give myself time off, and like that's my default nature of being.
Yeah.
So my big thing has been I need to get better at giving myself more time off.
Yeah.
And just relaxing, doing other things.
Don't think about like, oh, but I could be making money, or I could be making stuff right now. No,
it doesn't matter.
People can wait.
Yeah, absolutely.
People can wait. It's fine. They're like, you're not the only YouTube channel they're subscribed to. They're subscribed to fucking 300 other content creators they can watch in the meantime.
Absolutely.
You're just one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and especially for me, like, I focus on the business of all this side stuff. For me, like YouTube actually is a very small part of my overall business. And so I'm often running more on the product side of things and the marketing side of things on the other sides of the business. But it's a journey to let go and engage in other things. Yeah, for sure.
It really is hard.
Yeah. When's it all end? What's the goal?
When I off myself. When does it all end?
You know, like what is the destination? What is the final destination, or is it like a continuous journey?
The final destination for me is at my funeral. I want whoever reads out my obituary to fucking hate me for how long the obituary is going to be. That's what I've said to people.
Okay.
I want to do so many different things in life and achieve so many things with my life that the guy reading out my obituary is going to hate me. And if I can do that, then I'll be laughing in the grave, you know?
Wow.
Like, you know, because again, like I've always been one of those kids that gets bored very easily with something. You know, I'll pick up a new thing, get it hyper obsessed with it, and then immediately be like, okay, I'm done with this. Next toy. And you know, creatively speaking, I've always been like that as well. That's why I've done so many things so far. But you know, there's still so many other things I want to try. You know, like new businesses and new ideas, new content ideas, obviously, and just like life experiences in general. You know, like I started going back to the gym again recently, and like, you know, because I was like, oh God, I'm turning 30. I'm gonna fucking, I don't want to be like one of those like grandmas in the station where their back's like 90 degrees.
Dude,
you know?
There's so many of those in Japan.
So many of those in Japan. And I'm like, I don't want to be one of those people. I want a straight back. So like, you know, I've been like taking more care of my, you know, physical health now as well as my mental health. And it's like, yeah, you know, just like trying out different things, because I think experiences are so priceless, you know. And, you know, my mom always used to say like, you know, she would say this quote in Japanese. She would constantly say as I was growing up, which is "Jinsei ni muda na koto wa nai," which means in life nothing is pointless. You might find it pointless at the time that you're experiencing it, but it always comes back to be beneficial in some way.
Absolutely.
And if you keep that in mind, then there is nothing stopping you from learning something new.
Such wise words.
My parents are wise, man. My parents are very wise.
I think that's a great way to end the podcast, Joey.
You're like, how do you go from there? You know?
Yeah, honestly, that is like the sage life advice.
Yeah,
for,
my mom's
for every
spitting bars,
person.
and then we're done. Yeah,
I love that. It's such a wonderful way to end. Where can people find you? I know there's a lot of places to go on, Mr. Obituary.
Trash Taste, watch that. Anime Man, watch that. Joey Bissinger, my second channel. Nonsense, obviously. Watch. Buy nonsense stuff. Buy nonsense clothes. They're dope. I guess you can follow my music. Although I haven't really done it recently, but Ikuru is my stage name. What else is there? That's about it, I guess.
Your Twitter, your Twitch.
Oh, no, don't worry about those.
Yeah, I mean,
don't worry about those. Instagram?
Yeah,
I'm on Instagram a lot more than Twitter, because Twitter sucks ass. So Instagram. Yeah, that's about it.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed that episode, then tap over here for another one that I think you really might enjoy. And if you want to support the channel, remember to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. See you in the next one.